Hey, welcome. My name is Erica, and it's awesome that you, yes, you, are here joining into Just Horrifying. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the case of Melisa Lucio, who's been on death row since 2007, when she was convicted of killing her 2-year-old daughter Myra. On April 27th, 2022, Melisa will be executed, which is only in a few days. She will be the first Latina woman to be put to death in the state of Texas. Let's start from the beginning. Melisa was born on July 18th, 1968. Her father really wasn't around much, so she was raised by her mother. At roughly around 6 years old, Melisa started to be sexually abused by her mother's boyfriend, but didn't tell her mother right away. And then she started getting sexually assaulted by family members. Finally, Melisa got the courage to tell her mom about the sexual abuse. But instead of believing her own daughter, Melisa was called a liar and that she didn't know what she was talking about. Now, I can't even imagine what Melisa must have felt to go to your mother and tell her about this horrific thing that was happening to you, and for her not to believe you. When Melisa was 16, she dropped out of high school and got married. Now, I kind of wonder if she did this just to leave her mother's home and have a fresh start somewhere else. And, of course, to escape her tragic childhood. But, unfortunately, the man she married was not a man. They ended up having 5 kids together, and eventually, he left her and the kids, pretty much abandoned them. Soon after the divorce, Melisa met a man named Robert Alvarez, eventually getting married and moving into an apartment together. He also was abusive, and they ended up having 6 kids together. So at this time, Melisa had 11 kids. 11 kids to feed, to clothe, to care for. That's a crazy amount of kids. I'm sure the family was struggling big time. In 1995, Child Protective Services got involved and charged Melisa with neglectful supervision, but none of the kids were taken out of the home. In 1999, 4 years later, Melisa gave birth to a son, and Child Protective Services learned that Melisa and the baby tested positive for cocaine. And still, CPS, which is Child Protective Services, let the children still stay home with her. According to the CPS receipts, Melisa and her husband received roughly around $5,000 a month on welfare benefits. But of course, most of that money went to drugs. There was a time where they were homeless and slept at a park, and the kids would rely on food from the school. On September 6th, 2004, Melisa gave birth to her 12th child, Myra Alvarez. And still, at this time, they were just making ends meet and were living in a 2-bedroom, run-down apartment located on the 2nd floor. A CPS specialist made a visit to Melisa's home and described the conditions unfit for children. Ants were everywhere, and even on the mattress where Myra slept. When the CPS guy went into the refrigerator, all that was inside was a rotten head of lettuce, a carton of eggs, and a jar of mayonnaise. And he also stated that the refrigerator had an odor of spoiled food. The pantry contained only 1 small can of corn, a box of salt, some sauce, and a small box of infant mixed cereal. The whole house smelt like urine. After this, the CPS man went to the back of the room where the children were to see their condition. He seen a dime-sized bruise on the 4-year-old and a scratch on his head. Another child, who was 3, had a bite mark the size of 2 quarters on his shoulder, multiple scratches on his face, and insect bites all over his arms and legs. A 2-year-old had a scab on her head and insect bites on her back, legs, and arms. It was noted that this child was so dirty, she even had dried feces on her. The CPS ordered the kids to go to a foster care. 2 years later, in November of 2006, the CPS returned Myra and 8 of the children back to Melisa and her husband. Things were going well for a few months, and they were going to move into a new apartment for a fresh new start. Robert, Melissa's husband, took a couple of the older kids to go drop off some stuff at the new apartment. Melissa stayed back with the younger children. She was cleaning the house. Soon after Robert left the kids, they started to go outside and walk downstairs to play in the yard. Myra ended up falling from the top of the stairs all the way down to the bottom. Melissa went outside to see what happened, and after Myra cried for a bit, she went along to play with her siblings like nothing happened. Within the next 48 hours, Myra ended up showing signs that something was definitely wrong. At dinner, she ate her food but ended up throwing it up. Then the next day, she ate her breakfast fine, but for the rest of the day, she didn't eat anything. It's like she totally lost her appetite. The day after that, all she had was juice, and she started having breathing issues, and she looked very tired. Melissa had stated that she thought she was catching a cold. By this time, they were in the new apartment, and they had a mattress in the room. Melissa ended up putting Myra on it to take a nap. Myra would never wake up. According to the family, Myra died in her sleep 2 days after she fell down the flight of stairs outside their old apartment. When the paramedics were called to the residence, 2-year-old Myra was unresponsive and not breathing. According to the Cameron County District Attorney's Office, Myra was found at the home with signs of abuse on her body. She had scattered bruising, bite marks on her back, patches of her hair had been pulled out, and a broken arm. Melissa stated that Myra had fallen down a set of stairs, and this led to the injuries. Myra was pronounced dead upon arrival at the local hospital. It was later determined that Myra's arm had been broken for 2 to 7 weeks prior to her death, and an autopsy also showed a head injury and bruising of the kidneys, lungs, and spinal cord. Following Myra's death, Melissa was arrested and questioned for roughly 5 to 6 hours by the Texas Ranger without a lawyer present and without receiving any food or water throughout the duration. Melissa did admit to spanking Myra, but denied ever having abused her, which she repeated over and over and over again, more than 100 times. She was then told by the Texas Ranger, quote unquote, "Right now, it looks like you are a cold-blooded killer. Now, are you a cold-blooded killer, or were you just a frustrated mother who just took it out on her?" He continued by telling her, "We already know what happened." After countless hours, Melissa finally broke down and said, "What do you want me to say? I'm responsible for it then." Also, I wanted to mention that Melissa was actually pregnant with twins at this time. The prosecutors argued that Melissa had previously lost custody of some of her children and had a history of drug use. But Melissa's defense claims that investigators did not consider evidence showing that Myra had motor problems, which often there is a history of early delay in development of motor skills. This may present like a delay in the ability to sit up, learning to walk well, that could have caused her fall. Also, she had circulatory complications that would explain the bruises. The defense lawyers also argued that Melissa had never abused any of the kids. Also, the defense lawyers argued that Melissa had been abused since she was 6 years old, a situation that continued in her adult life, which made her particularly vulnerable to the prosecution's aggressive treatment. None of Melissa's children has ever accused her of abuse, but rather are staying together and defending her. What's more, the district attorney who originally pushed this case, Armando, is today serving a 13-year sentence in federal prison for bribery and corruption. It said he would pay judges money to win cases. Melissa's legal battle has been going on for more than a decade, with several Texan courts upholding the conviction. But a 2020 documentary called The State of Texas vs. Melissa put her case in the public spotlight. While researching the case, I ended up renting this documentary and watching it. I personally thought I was going to hear some evidence that maybe would steer me and think that maybe this lady was innocent. But personally, I still think the same thing after watching the documentary. I think Melissa is guilty. In the documentary, Melisa argues of her innocence. Melisa contends that she would never hurt her children and said she made these false confessions to shield one of her older daughters, Alexandria, from being blamed for Myra's death. The older daughter told a private investigator she was the one to blame for Myra's fall, according to deleted scenes from the documentary that have been shared with the Houston Chronicle. While I was watching the documentary, Melisa's daughter did come out, Alexandra, and she did state that she didn't have an attachment to the 2-year-old sister of hers because she didn't know her well and would spank her on occasion when she didn't listen, but that she never ever pushed her and didn't do anything to make her sister fall down those stairs. Melisa ended up giving birth to twins in prison and had to put them up for adoption. While the family readily admits Melisa was not a perfect mom, her lawyers contend that she never physically abused any of her 14 children. They point to decades of CPS records as proof that she never physically harmed them amid the struggles that brought social workers to her door. Melisa insists she falsely pleaded guilty to the killing of her 2-year-old daughter in 2007. She made a last-ditch attempt to stop her April 27, 2022 execution. Lawyers from the Innocence Project representing Melisa filed a request for clemency with the Texas Board of Pardons and Parolees, a move that says this is Melisa's last legal option. Sad story. Wow. There are a lot of people who believe that she's innocent, and everyone is entitled to their own opinion. I personally think it's fucking heinous to try to blame your own daughter, Alexandria, for the murder of your 2-year-old daughter. And I totally understand that Melisa had a very rough upbringing. However, you can choose to repeat the cycle. Become a better parent to your kids. Some people don't even deserve to have children, and they continue to have the ability to get pregnant. I'd lay my life down for my kids, and I'd die protecting them 150%. So this story breaks me. One thing that does bother me though, I'm not sure if the falling down the stairs is a made-up story so that Melisa could cover what she did to her baby girl. The medical examiner in the documentary stated that the injuries were not from a fall and occurred 24 hours prior to death. Like I said, everyone is entitled to their own opinion. I have mine. What's yours? Right now there's a petition and people are signing. They want her to get life in prison, but not be executed. Whether she gets executed or gets life in prison, she belongs where she's at. Again, with all these cases, who's the one that suffers the most? These poor innocent children. It's just sad. All right, you guys. Well, take care. Stay safe. And until next time, bye.